If you've been following the school board meetings, back in August, the committee had spent some time creating a safe return to schools plan. And we had to have that. It's on a federal level. If we're accepting federal dollars, that's what we had to have. You heard of things called ESSER 3 or maybe ARP, American Rescue Plan, Recovery Plan. But anyway, the provisions in the plan, they have been since August, and now September, and now October, changing a little bit. And taking information, I guess, from at the school board meetings from those that came to the meeting and expressed their concerns as to whatever the situation was. But let's call a spade a spade. It's mostly the concerns are centered around the concept of student usage and student masks. So, well, that was in the plan. I mean, it was always in the plan. Certainly some different, I guess, provisions and tweaking of the plan has been ongoing. So tonight's informational meeting is some research and doing some digging and talking to some colleagues around the state. It is my intentions to take this back to the school board, and I'll tell you what it all means here in a minute, and for them to determine or make considerations as to potential changes to the plan. This is not the plan in its entirety. That is on our school website, and if you go to our school website in the top ribbon over to the right, it says COVID. And if you click on that, you can see the plan in its entirety. I didn't feel, because most of it hasn't changed, it's just these few things that have changed, and I'll give you some rationale as to why it's changed. So you can go look at the plan in its entirety on our school website, and you'll see it. There's two plans: a safe return to school plan. You'll see an ARP plan, and there again, that's American Rescue or Recovery Plan. And you'll see both of those documents in Spanish. And then you'll also see a little heading up there called COVID numbers. So we're reporting on a weekly basis. We just started here of letting the public know as to what our COVID numbers are within our school walls. So those are things you can find on the school website if you go digging and looking. So for the sake of time again, this is just the first couple pages, and the very first page, you'll see the pink on there. That was not included the very first time. These came out of a Department of Education review of our plan and said that we had to make some sort of statement or declaration as to vaccinations, the social, emotional, and mental health of our students and our staff. So those statements that you see on there has been included in the plan to address that part that the Department of Ed said that we needed to have on there. It doesn't state anything grandiose, or it's not new material, so to speak. But nonetheless, they're there. I think you can read through that. I don't think those are huge sticking points. So they are what they are. Other than the vaccination, it just says that we're not requiring, and I don't foresee that ever happening within the Parks and School District. So, but we're trying to work with Avera, checking in every month as to the necessity or the need or the desire for that organization to maybe come help put on a clinic if it was so desired. So if you turn it over, you'll see a back page that says extracurricular. Again, there's more stuff in this. I'm just taking the pages out that were addressed. You see the pink there, and the reason why that is addressed or why it's cleaned up is because in the initial plan, the committee had made the statement, and at the time the rationale was to try to entice people to get vaccinated. So we made a declaration. We treated vaccinated and unvaccinated. The statements were different. So if you were vaccinated, you could do basically essentially, if you're participating in extracurricular, you didn't have to wear a mask. But if you're unvaccinated, you had to. Well, at the time we went through this in late July, it really wasn't heading the direction that it has been as of recent. And there were some decisions that came down from CDC as to maybe you could no longer delineate or differentiate between the two. So we cleaned that up. Essentially that says students identified as close contacts, now these are kids playing sports, will be allowed to practice during or compete during the duration of their assigned quarantine period if they're a close contact. We got rid of statements vaccinated, unvaccinated. Doesn't say that anymore, okay? If you flip it over and at the bottom of the other page, you'll see red, okay? So this is where we're gonna start getting into a little bit of the grit, okay? First and foremost, and I made this statement in September, but I'm not sure people are understanding, or it's not resonating, it's not sticking, the fact that an elementary classroom does not have the ability, because the nature of an elementary classroom and how the teachers orchestrate that, how the teachers teach, how the kids interact within an elementary classroom, the social isolation aspect is not really, it's just not an opportunity for elementary teachers and elementary kids to do. So the nature of an elementary classroom lends itself to the concept of if there is a positive, let's say we're all a section, I'm positive, Mr. Kinnenberg's the teacher, we're all going to be in a mask for 10 days, okay? And once we go through that process, because of the nature of the classroom, we cannot social isolate. Now, the comparative is when you get up to this level, within a classroom, because we've done it, you can take middle schoolers and high schoolers, and you can get them from that 6-foot circle, and you can isolate them and keep them away from others. You know, those kids are potentially still in a mask, but when we identify through a contact tracing investigation that you weren't in the 6-foot bubble, you're out. You don't have to wear that mask. I'm in the 6-foot bubble, then I have to, but I can still socially isolate within that classroom. I can go sit in a corner. We can make sure that we move desks away from those particular students that are close contacts. So it's much more viable opportunity at the 7 through 12 level than it is in an elementary level, only because it's how teachers teach within the classroom structure. So that statement, and let's read it. It says, due to the nature of instructional strategies necessary for learning to take place and the inability to social distance in an elementary classroom, any diagnosed COVID positive case with an elementary classroom will render that classroom section, the entire section, as a close contact. Thus, the entire class will follow the close contact protocol. Now, if you flip that over, okay, this has always been in the plan. The only thing that got added was number 5. Okay, that number 5 was discussed in September. It was an idea that I had brought forth to the school board. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been there since the inception of the plan. Okay, so but let's, for the sake of time here, or for the sake of argument, let's talk about it. So all close contacts are mandated to wear a mask for 10 days quarantine period in school and on buses. All close contacts have the ability to test out. There's something too. If the parent so chooses, with a rapid antigen test, either there's 2 products we use. One's called the Binax Now, the other one's called the Cordell Quickview. Okay, you can test out, and this is CDC supported, between days 5 and 7. So if we're all close contacts, and my mom says, listen, we'll wear it for 5 days, but I want him tested on day 5, 6, or 7, whatever it happens to be. And if he's negative, then on day 8, according to CDC guidance, that student or that person can come out of that protocol. Now, you must remain symptom-free for the rest of the 14 days. But because you tested negative after that time frame, then you don't no longer have to wear that mask, okay? Now, that's what 2 says, 14 days. 3, if you look at the symptom checkpoint aspect, we'd have the kids report, or the teacher report if it's an elementary, we just kind of do a thumbs up. We have a couple intentional questions we're asking kids, and then we report back that to the central offices. So, and then number 4, it says all close contacts will social distance when and where practical. So if a parent so chooses, because their child is a close contact, there's still the number 1 option is they can stay home. 10 days, you're absent exempt. The teachers will create learning experiences the best they possibly can, will engage the students in Swivel or Google Classroom, and probably the smaller they are, you probably get more some of the homework packet aspect, but the teacher's still checking in with the student and trying to engage them, in a learning process, whether it's whole group or maybe even it's one-on-one with that teacher. And I know the teachers, not being here last year, but visiting with them, they did all that the best they possibly could. They engaged some kids independently, they engaged some kids small group, they put themselves out there in a whole group setting as well. So continue to do that. 5 is what I presented to them. There's this concept called serial testing, okay? So essentially, those first 2 statements are just statements that I guess would clarify or maybe explain as to the rationale behind serial testing. But it is a way, it's a mitigation strategy to stop, maybe not stop, slow the advancement. If you have a potential outbreak, where if you do some of this stuff, you can catch people through a serial testing if they were willing to engage in that testing process. So if you look at the 3rd dot, this kind of explains it. So screening testing procedures, close contact students will be allowed to participate in the school district screening testing program if they so choose. Upon being notified as a close contact status, a parent or guardian can ask for and agree to consent to a Cordell Quickview rapid antigen. Now it only says Cordell. Cordell is designed, it's a product, it's over the counter. I think you can go buy it at Walgreens or Walmart, wherever you want, but we've been supplied by the state of South Dakota in mass quantities. It's an over-the-counter product, but the reason for it is because it can do symptomatic, it can diagnose symptomatic, and it can diagnose asymptomatic. The Binax Now card is for symptomatic individuals. So the kid shows up, maybe has a slight temp, maybe doesn't, maybe got a little cough, a little stuffy, scratchy throat, this, that, or the other. If those kids, when they are showing up, we send them to the nurse and we're making phone calls, say, hey, here's the deal. If they didn't check within the morning, which is, we understand, then we ask for permission. If the parent wants to consent to have us test them because they're showing some symptoms, then we'll test them. And that's where you use the Binax Now card. You can still use the Cordell too, but let's say you're feeling fine. We're all close contacts. I'm the positive, and you all come and there's nothing wrong with you, right? As of now, which we don't know for sure. But if your parent wanted to consent to a Cordell to confirm that you are not infectious, then that's where that product comes in. So the Cordell is both, Binax is totally symptomatic, okay? So if you read through that, the Cordell Quickview rapid screening test can be conducted. So how is that going to work? So this would occur on a daily basis, 7:50 every morning in the district's nurse's office for 5 consecutive school days. Okay? So if that student comes in for 5 consecutive school days and tests negative, then that would relieve the responsibility that student wearing a mask, because they've proven through the Cordell that they are not in an infectious state right there. So they can go through that day, the next day we do the same thing. The reason why 5 school days is because, back to the first strategy, between day 5 and 7, you can test out. So let's say you did it on a Monday, we went through Friday, we tested you for 5 days, okay? Or, and weekend comes, okay, then technically, you're probably clear. Let's say you did it on a Wednesday. Well, we tested Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you have the weekend, and then 2 more school days. We're still in that 7-day window that CDC says that you could test out. Then we could test you on that 6th or 7th day when you came back. So you still the 5 school days that are inclusive in there. We'll catch it on either side of it, regardless of where the time frame falls. Now, so that's the rationale behind that. And again, as long as you remain, you're not symptomatic, it comes back negative, then there's no necessity at that time to have that particular individual wear a mask. If the student does not want to participate in the screening testing program, then again, we're back to our close contact mitigation strategies from day one. Close contacts, you're in for 10 days, okay? Again, with the option to test out between days 5 and 7. So you don't have to do this either. This is just another strategy that we are offering for kids. So if we don't, if parents are passionate about their kid not wearing that mask, then we're offering 3 different things where they don't have to, okay?
Is it 10 school days for the mask or 10 total days?
10 days. Yep, it's,
Okay.
yep. So
Calendar
not
days.
10 school days, just 10 days. Yep. So that's inclusive of your weekends. Yep. Okay, that's a good question. A negative test will allow for mask removal on day 8 for those, again, that if they don't want to do that, then there's that strategy that we referenced prior to that. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Question?
Yeah. So I'm in one of those close contact deals,
Okay.
but I refuse to wear a mask.
You refuse?
Yeah. What, do I have to go home then, or do I get to stay?
Yeah, no, you can't refuse.
You can't refuse to wear a mask.
No, not in the school setting, you can't.
Okay.
Okay, it's a good question. What else about this concept? The serial testing notion of it.
The Cordell test, is that a swab test or what kind of a test? is
So,
that?
so both of them, the Buy Next Now, and I've given more Buy Next Now tests than I care to remember, because I did it last year by myself. But they're just nasal swabs. We're not talking the thing that goes back. I mean, this is just the inside. And essentially, I can describe it to you because I got it down pat. You go in one nostril with a swab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other nostril, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You take the card out, put 6 drops of the antigen in it with the swab in there. Close the card, start the timer, and watch what it does. So, and the Cordell is a little bit different. It has the swab, but it goes into a solution that's already pre-mixed, and then you leave that in there, I think, for 10 minutes, and then you take it out, and then there's you put a, what do you call those, it's a little, not a stick. It's like you ever tested for pH levels,
Oh.
right? One of those, yeah, I don't know the
Strip.
term.
There's a test strip kind of?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, test strip, yep. And then that would determine, it would give you an indication as to whether that student or that particular sample is positive or not at the time. So, but that's a great question. So, yeah, not pretty invasive, evasive. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, I think most of our kids probably stick the balloon up their nose by ordering how this thing is. So, but that's a good question. What else about that notion? Yes, sir.
So these tests, that just tests for the protein, is that correct? It doesn't confirm that it's the COVID virus?
So, yeah, so it's a good point. That's a good point. So it's within that SARS family,
Yeah.
right? So if using the term about the protein, that SARS, to say that it's 100% that you have COVID, the fact that the proteins are evidence that the SARS virus is present at the time, then that's exactly what it's
So
identifying at the time.
If you test positive for one of these, do you go for an actual COVID test then?
Yeah, so 2 ways, you can, but it's not required and it's not mandated.
Okay.
So the CDC, the protocol, and our state Department of Health has always told schools that if that thing comes back positive, whether it's Binax or Cordell, then that in and of itself is enough to tell you that you are in an infectious state right now.
Okay.
Not necessarily that you got COVID, it's that you're infectious. You're shedding the virus at a load that it detected. So therefore, you should not be in a public setting, not just school, but you shouldn't be anywhere maybe sites home for 10 days
Okay.
because of that.
Now, is that labeled as COVID positive then?
So as far as the reporting measures, what we have to report from the state, because we're doing both of those programs in the state or with the Department of Health, then when we report it, yes, it is registered as a COVID positive. You're exactly right. So, okay?
And that goes into the database that actually says that student now has been
Yep.
okay.
Yep. So there's a website that we have to go, I don't know, like 3 pages long. We have to put some information in there. Most of it's demographic, stuff. But yeah, it does go into, and it's warehoused by the Department of Health.
Sure.
Yeah. It's their site. So what else about that? This concept. Okay. Now, if you flip it over, one of the things that we've been asked at the last 2 board meetings is people wanted, the people in the public wanted a number. Okay? What number is it gonna take in order to, trigger or hit the threshold in order to, for the school board to say, oh, mask mandate, everybody's in a mask mandate. Well, there is no number. I mean, to try to find a number, and you can see here, I came up with some numbers. But, and I'll explain to you in a second how we got there, but very difficult notion, very difficult concept. But this page here explains what's on that red, okay? I can't read the red, I'm sorry. But Mr. Kinnenberg and I have been working on how to, make that product a little bit more viable. And the one that we did have on wouldn't support the changes that we had to make according to the Department of Ed. So I put this sheet in here so you could read it better, okay? So if you look at it, now the very first, second, third, fourth word, data points to consider. Doesn't say bam. It doesn't say mandate. It's just, these are things for the board, us as administrators, what's happening in our building. Do we need to take a hard look at, okay, where are we at with this thing? Okay? And let's not all do that because we're going to jinx ourselves. We've been above the line. We've done really well. But I'm telling you, the ebb and flow of this thing, even though the state's numbers are coming down, I watch them every day. We're on a little bit of a downturn here, and let's pray. But to me, I've been told from Sanford and Avera doctors that it's cyclical. I mean, just depending on, I think when we truly revert to not a beautiful day like this and we're all a little bit more indoors and we're still going out and doing those things and interacting, which is all well and good, that we'll see another spike, okay? But these are points to consider. So the first one, the number of COVID positive students at any one time in any one section, class, grade, or team at an independent school level. It's just where we at. We look at it and say what's going on. And any of those concepts, section, class, grade, team, or throw the district in there if you want to. Number 2, a minimum of 2 known COVID positive students in any one section, class, grade, or team at an independent school level. So if there's 2 kids, like all of us now, we're in a class, and let's say you and I both have it, okay, what do we need to look at there? What's going to happen? What should we do? Okay, and then part of that is just going through a contact tracing investigation. And if it's elementary, we're still, even though the nature of it, we're going to identify kids as a close contact, we're still going to ask the teachers, we're still going to have some conversations as to about what was truly happening in those classrooms during those time frames that they were identified. And oftentimes we find ourselves through the investigation, some kids haven't even been here. So if that's we find ourselves in those cases, that's something that we have to consideration. Not that gets them out of that mask mandate, only, okay, how many kids do we have potentially looking at that it may continue to spread to in that environment, okay? 3, here's the number, and I'll explain how I got it. A 3% student body infection rate at any one time at an independent school level. Elementary, right now 283 kids is what we have in those kindergarten through 6. So 3% of that, you can see 8.49 students. 7 through 12, 200. So obviously 3%, 6. That's a number. Wanted a number, here's a number. How did I get it? So conversations with several other school districts. The people that I talked to, basically they had a number. I'm like, where did you get the number? And essentially what they did is went back the best they could and looked at last year's data. At any one time at their highest point, student and staff, as to where they thought they were. And they threw around numbers to me from 1.5 to 2.5. So 2.5% at their greatest point, percent of their student population had COVID at one time. So I heard that from the Madison School District, I heard that from the T School District, I heard that from the Harrisburg School District, I heard that from the Millbank School District. Schools a little bit smaller than us, Wilmont was in there. And these are all people I'm on an executive committee with. So we got together and we had business to do, and so I'm asking, you know, because how do we come with this number? You know, so that's some of the feedback that they gave me. And then when I looked at our attendance data. I sat down with Mr. Bruning from my teachers. The staffing is a little bit easier to track. I looked at our Infinite Campus as far as our students. You know, I can't sit here and tell you that at any one point in time what the height was, but I would suspect, I mean, I remember we had a conversation, I think there was 11 positives at one point in time within the system last year, I think at its height, and that included students and staff. You know, so the generation of the number of 3%, based on what others told me, I set it just a little bit higher than what others in those other communities are doing. And some of them don't have a number, right? I mean, they just don't have one, again, because of the nature and difficulty of trying to find a number. So those are points to consider. That's what I'm recommending to the school board. I don't know, we'll see what they say, yay or nay, or if they want a different number. But they wanted a number, people asked about a number. This is the number I came up with, and you guys are hearing the explanation as to how I arrived at it, okay? Another point to consider, our data point, is a diagnosed COVID positive within a section, class, grade, or team that results in 50% of the students in the section, class, grade, or team being identified as a close contact. So again, more at the 7 through 12 level, through a contact tracing investigation, whether it filters out, you know, within any one of those teams or one section. And we put those things in there because some of those kids, while they're in this section for, let's say, English 1, they may be in this section for Algebra 1. So they're mixing, right? So if we come up with within one particular section like that, 50% of the kids, boom, close contacts, okay, now propensity there for that virus to have the number of kids being exposed to it, that's just a data point. Are we going to take a look at that? What are we going to do with that? Okay. 5, all school level mask mandates will be reevaluated after 10 calendar days from the date of implementation. And that mask mandate, again, is referencing this notion of, okay, the entire elementary or the entire high school or the entire district. Because a section of first graders, if there's a positive, they're already in for 10 days, unless they want to jump through, you know, what you could call some of these hoops in order to stay out of the mask mandate. But they'll always be reevaluated. So I'm suggesting that here's a mask mandate, it's here. When are we gonna have the conversation again? I don't know. No, we're gonna take a hard look at this with frequency to see what our numbers are doing within our system. Not just saying, okay, now everybody's in a mask mandate and we'll see you at the end of May, or we'll see you at the end of first semester, or whatever. I'm suggesting to the board that that's not an approach that we want to entertain. So a school or district level mask mandate will supersede all other close contact mitigation strategies from the designated mask mandate timeframe until the mask mandate is rescinded. So if they make that designation, okay, everybody's in, then we're going to get away from this 10-day or testing out notion of days 5 through 7 and coming out on day 8. We're just going to ride this thing out for 10 days and see where it gets us and have that conversation again and say, okay, things calmed down a little bit, or we didn't have any more continuous spread throughout, whether it's the class or it's spilled over into other classes as well. And we'll just have to have that conversation and see what it looks like, okay? And then mask mandates can be implemented per board directive for any section, class, grade, team, or district level on a case-by-case basis. So that's what the notion was that I came up with, to try to be responsive to some of the questions that the public had asked, in the last couple of board meetings. So that's kind of in its nutshell. Like I said, that back page is just kind of, if you look on our plan, that's
Is this similar from last year, or is this the same?
We changed the formatting
Okay.
a little bit. Yeah, so if you look on the website now, it's a little bit different
Okay.
and it's even different than what we put out the first in August.
Okay.
Yep, only because, like I said, we couldn't get that template to be it wasn't very user-friendly. So we try to enhance it a little bit to make it easier for us to manipulate and change. So, questions? Because I got about 2 minutes before I'll go for a board meeting. Anything? Clear as mud, right? Okay. I thank you for coming, and hopefully the word gets out. I want you guys to take away from this is that I'll do everything I can. I can tell you, there's nobody on that school board, and there is not one administrator that wants a mask mandate. What we're doing is doing everything we can to, one, respect the wishes of the public and give you choices and options from you seeing what's in the best interest of your child, because there are options there. If it goes to that level, you still don't have to be here. We provide you learning opportunities within the classroom as a close contact. We can try to get out of those situations or test out of those situations. But nobody wants a mask mandate. And I'll do everything I can based on what I've come up with, the research that I've done, to make sure that we don't end up there. And if we do, for the shortest term as possible, depending on the nature of the virus and what it does to our student and staff population. And the other part is we're only looking, and I know some of our documents, like the colored documents, it has a suggestion of school and community. One thing that I learned from those people that I referenced earlier, everybody is looking at their school setting first and foremost. Maybe fleeting looking at county, but it's what's happening within their walls. So, and we are obviously a complex of one physical footprint, but I think we have the ability to isolate, so to speak, to some degree, to keep the differences between the two. And we'll certainly take that into consideration as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yep,
you.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Very good.